Picture this: it's a cold, moonlit night in 1878, and the residents of a small English village are huddled together, whispering in terrified voices about what they've just witnessed. A ghostly carriage, drawn by horses with glowing red eyes, had raced through the streets before vanishing into thin air. The chilling account of the phantom coach of Bostall Heath wasn't just a local legend. It was documented in newspapers, investigated by skeptics, and debated for decades. And here's the thing: even today, no one can fully explain what really happened that night. Stories like this aren't just campfire tales, they're woven into the fabric of history, leaving behind questions that defy logic, science, and sometimes even our own senses. From ancient civilizations to modern times, the world is filled with eerie encounters, unexplained phenomena, and mysteries that refuse to be solved. What makes these events so haunting isn't just their strangeness, it's the fact that they linger unresolved, challenging everything we think we know about the past. That's exactly what we're diving into today: 25 paranormal events in history that still spark debate, controversy, and spine-tingling fascination. These aren't just ghost stories, they're real-life puzzles that have stumped historians, scientists, and even skeptics for centuries. Some involve legendary figures whose fates remain shrouded in mystery. Others are mass sightings documented by hundreds of witnesses, yet brushed aside by official explanations that don't quite add up. And then there are those chilling moments when history itself seems to glitch, leaving behind traces of something we still can't explain. So if you've ever wondered what really lies beyond the edges of our understanding, or why certain mysteries refuse to fade into the past, you're about to embark on a journey through time, where the line between fact and folklore blurs, and the answers might be stranger than anything you've imagined. Ready to step into the unknown? Let's begin. In the sweltering summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg became the stage for one of history's most baffling and terrifying spectacles. It began with a single woman, a lone figure suddenly overcome by an irresistible urge to dance. Within days, dozens more joined her, their bodies convulsing in a frenzied, uncontrollable rhythm. By the end of the month, nearly 400 people were caught in the same nightmare, dancing for days without rest, their feet bleeding, their hearts giving out, some collapsing dead from exhaustion. This wasn't a celebration, it was a plague, a literal dance of death that defied all logic. What caused this horrifying phenomenon? Theories range from the plausible to the wildly speculative. Some historians point to mass hysteria, a collective psychological breakdown triggered by the stresses of famine, disease, and medieval superstition. Others argue it was ergot poisoning, a toxic mold found in rye bread that can cause hallucinations and spasms. But here's the catch: neither theory fully explains why the dancing lasted for weeks or why it spread so rapidly through the town. Even stranger, this wasn't an isolated incident. Similar outbreaks were recorded across Europe for centuries, though none as deadly as Strasbourg's. The dancing plague remains a chilling mystery, a moment when history itself seems to spiral into the surreal. Was it a medical anomaly, a supernatural curse, or something far darker buried in the psyche of an entire community? To this day, no one can say for certain, only that for those who lived through it, the dance was no metaphor. It was a living nightmare. In the early morning of June 30th, 1908, a force unlike anything modern science had ever recorded tore through the sky over Siberia. Witnesses described a fireball brighter than the sun, streaking across the horizon before erupting in a cataclysmic explosion, one so powerful it flattened 80 million trees across 800 square miles of remote forest. The shockwave circled the globe twice, and for nights afterward, the skies over Europe and Asia glowed eerily, as if illuminated by some unseen force. Yet when scientists finally reached the remote Tunguska region years later, they found something just as puzzling as the blast itself: no crater, no fragments. No clear explanation for how something so devastating could leave so little trace behind. The leading theory, a meteorite or comet fragment exploded in midair, disintegrating before impact, a phenomenon known as an airburst. The sheer scale of destruction matches what we'd expect from a cosmic object roughly the size of a football field vaporizing miles above the Earth, but skeptics point out gaps in that explanation. If it was a meteor, why were no substantial remnants ever found? Why did eyewitnesses report strange maneuvers in the object's flight path, almost as if it changed course? These unanswered questions have fueled wilder theories. Some speculate it was an experiment gone wrong by Nikola Tesla, who was reportedly testing wireless energy transmission around the same time. Others whisper about a crashed extraterrestrial craft, citing reports of peculiar radiation patterns in the soil. Then there are the indigenous Evenki people, whose oral traditions describe the event not as a natural disaster, but as the wrath of the fire god Ogdi, who supposedly descended to punish humanity. Their accounts passed down for generations include details mainstream science only confirmed decades later, like the strange, silvery clouds that lingered for weeks. More than a century later, Tunguska remains a paradox. It's the largest impact event in recorded history, yet it defies the very rules of impacts. It's been studied exhaustively, yet the more we learn, the stranger it becomes. Whether cosmic coincidence, secret experiment, or something beyond our understanding, one thing's certain. When the sky split open that summer morning, it left behind a mystery that still haunts the intersection of science and the unexplained. One morning in February 1855, the people of Devon, England, woke up to a sight that sent shivers down their spines. Overnight, something or someone had left a trail of hoof-like marks stamped deep into the fresh snow. But these weren't the scattered tracks of a wandering deer or a lost farm animal. They formed a near-perfect single-file line stretching over 100 miles across the countryside. The prints cut through fields, over rooftops, even scaling walls and haystacks, as if whatever made them had walked effortlessly over any obstacle in its path. The sheer scale of the phenomenon was staggering. Witnesses described the marks as resembling a horse's hoof, but with a bizarre, almost demonic twist. Each print bore a cleft like a cloven foot. Panic spread rapidly. Newspapers dubbed them the devil's footprints, and soon theories exploded. Could it have been Satan himself pacing the countryside in the dead of night? Local clergy warned of divine judgment, while terrified families barred their doors, afraid of what might return after dark. But not everyone reached for supernatural explanations. Scientists of the time scrambled to propose more earthly causes. One popular theory suggested an escaped kangaroo from a private menagerie. Its hind legs might leave a vaguely hoof-like impression. Others pointed to weather anomalies like small whirlwinds or unusual frost patterns that could warp snow into strange shapes. Then there were the more whimsical ideas, a rogue hot air balloon trailing chains, or even an experimental steam-powered device gone astray. Yet none of these theories fully explained the footprints' eerie precision, their relentless path, or their sudden disappearance. Modern researchers have revisited the case with new perspectives. Some propose it could have been a rare atmospheric phenomenon like ball lightning or electrical plasma, leaving scorch marks that melted into hoof-like shapes. Others speculate about an undiscovered animal, perhaps a large nocturnal bird with an unusual gait. But despite advances in science, the devil's footprints remain stubbornly unexplained. What makes this incident so enduringly chilling isn't just the mystery itself, it's the way it pierced the everyday. This wasn't a shadowy figure glimpsed in a haunted castle or a phantom seen by a lone traveler. It was a physical, tangible trail left in the snow of a quiet English countryside witnessed by hundreds. And like the best historical enigmas, it forces us to confront an unsettling question. If the truth isn't supernatural, why can't science even today fully account for what happened that winter's night? Buried in the vaults of Yale University's rare book collection lies an object so confounding that it's been called the world's most mysterious manuscript. A small, unassuming volume, roughly the size of a modern paperback, its pages are filled with looping, alien script. A language unlike any other on Earth, interspersed with bizarre illustrations of plants that don't exist, celestial maps of unknown constellations, and nude women bathing in surreal green pools. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a puzzle that's resisted decipherment for over 600 years. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, the manuscript's origins are as opaque as its contents. Some believe it was crafted in northern Italy, possibly by an eccentric alchemist or a secretive religious sect. Others argue it's the work of a lone genius or a master forger playing an elaborate joke on history. What's undeniable is the sheer strangeness of its pages. The text flows left to right with a rhythmic, almost musical repetition of characters, suggesting a real language rather than random gibberish. Yet despite over a century of intense scrutiny by cryptographers, linguists, and even wartime codebreakers, not a single word has been reliably translated. Theories about its purpose are just as wild as the illustrations. Could it be an encrypted herbal compendium hiding forgotten medicinal knowledge in plain sight? The botanical drawings might support this, except none of the plants match known species. Some pages hint at astrological or alchemical symbolism, fueling speculation it's a manual for arcane rituals. Then there's the biological section where those strange nude figures are connected by intricate tubing resembling an early and utterly inexplicable depiction of human anatomy. Even modern technology has failed to crack its code. Artificial intelligence algorithms have analyzed the text's patterns, concluding it shares traits with real languages like Hebrew or Aramaic, but no consistent translation emerges. In 2019, a researcher claimed to have decoded snippets using medieval Arabic, but the academic community swiftly debunked the theory. The manuscript's resistance to interpretation is almost supernatural, as if it was designed not just to conceal information, but to actively defy understanding. What keeps scholars obsessing over it isn't just the mystery, but the tantalizing possibility that it's a genuine artifact of something lost, a forgotten dialect, a disbanded cult, or even a glimpse into an alternate scientific tradition. Or perhaps, as some quietly suggest, it's all an exquisite hoax, a Renaissance-era scam that's fooled generations. But if so, why go to such lengths? The ink, parchment, and pigments are all period accurate, and the labor involved would have been staggering for a mere prank. The Voynich Manuscript endures as a riddle wrapped in parchment. It whispers of secrets just beyond our grasp, daring us to solve it while laughing at our failures. Whether a work of madness, genius, or mischief, one thing's certain. In a world where we've decoded ancient hieroglyphs and cracked wartime enigmas, this little book remains gloriously, stubbornly indecipherable. Imagine lying awake at night, straining to hear a sound no one else seems to notice, a faint, relentless droning, like a distant engine idling just on the edge of your hearing. This isn't science fiction. It's the daily reality for residents of Taos, New Mexico, where since the early 1990s, hundreds of people have reported the same infuriating phenomenon. They call it the Taos Hum, a low-frequency noise that doesn't register on microphones or recording equipment but drives those who hear it to desperation. Some compare it to the rumble of a diesel truck parked outside their home, others to the throbbing pulse of a subwoofer through walls. But no matter how they describe it, the result is the same: sleepless nights, migraines, and annoying frustration that no one can prove what's tormenting them. Scientists have flocked to Taos for decades, armed with sensitive equipment and theories. Early studies confirmed something peculiar. Around 2% of the town's population could hear the hum, while others stood baffled beside them, hearing nothing at all. Tests ruled out obvious culprits like industrial machinery, power lines, or underground pipelines. even stranger, the hum seemed to vanish when sufferers left the area, only to return the moment they came back. This wasn't just local noise pollution, it was tied to the place itself, or perhaps to the people who perceived it. Psychological explanations soon emerged. Could it be tinnitus, a condition where the brain generates phantom sounds? The problem: most sufferers report tinnitus as a high-pitched ringing, not this deep, vibrating drone. Others suggested it might be a form of auditory pareidolia, where the brain latches onto ambient noise and amplifies it into something more. But why would this happen so consistently in one specific location? Then there's the more unsettling possibility. The hum isn't external or psychological at all, but a physiological reaction, a hypersensitivity to electromagnetic fields or seismic activity imperceptible to most. But Taos isn't alone. Similar mystery hums have been reported worldwide, from Bristol, England to Bondi, Australia. In some cases, they've been traced to practical sources like factory equipment or ocean waves vibrating underground. Yet Taos resists all such explanations. The most compelling theory points to ultra-low frequency sound waves generated by natural phenomena, like shifting tectonic plates or wind patterns interacting with the surrounding Sangre de Cristo Mountains. These frequencies, often below 20 Hz, are known as infrasound, inaudible to most, but capable of causing unease, nausea, or even hallucinations in those sensitive to them. Still, the puzzle persists. If the hum is infrasound, why don't instruments detect it? Why does it only affect certain individuals, and why has no one found its definitive source after 30 years of searching? For those who hear it, the Taos hum is more than a curiosity. It's a visceral reminder of how much we still don't understand about the boundaries of perception, and whether some mysteries are meant to be solved at all. Los Angeles, January 15, 1947. A mother walking with her child through a vacant lot in Leimert Park stumbles upon a sight so horrific it will haunt the city for generations. There, severed cleanly at the waist, lies the body of a young woman, pale as marble, posed with eerie precision, her mouth slashed into a grotesque, permanent smile. This was Elizabeth Short, soon to be infamous as the Black Dahlia, a name plucked from a noir film and cemented into true crime history. But behind the sensational headlines lies something even darker, a murder so brutal, so meticulously executed, that its unresolved nature has spawned whispers of curses, ghostly apparitions, and a case that seems to defy the laws of both justice and the afterlife. From the moment her body was discovered, the details felt unnervingly unnatural. Short's corpse had been drained of blood, scrubbed immaculately clean, almost as if prepared for some macabre ritual. The precision of the cuts suggested surgical skill, yet no murder weapon or forensic evidence was ever found. Even the FBI's top profilers were baffled by the killer's ability to vanish without a trace, leaving behind only a trail of taunting letters sent to newspapers, some containing Short's personal belongings. But the true horror didn't end with the investigation. Locals began reporting eerie phenomena near the crime scene and Short's former residences. Shadowy figures matching her description were glimpsed in mirrors at the Biltmore Hotel where she was last seen alive. Visitors to the now demolished lot claimed to hear phantom whispers or the scent of gardenias, her signature perfume, lingering in the air. Some psychics insist her spirit remains trapped, unable to move on until her killer is named. Even those who have dug too deep into the case tell of bizarre misfortunes, sudden illnesses, financial ruin, or vivid nightmares where a woman with dark hair and that haunting smile watches from the corners of their rooms. Skeptics dismiss these accounts as the inevitable folklore surrounding such a grisly unsolved crime. Yet the sheer volume of testimonies is hard to ignore. Could it be collective hysteria, or is there something more at play? Historians point to the unsettling parallels between Short's murder and occult symbolism, the bisected body resembling ancient sacrificial rites, the posed corpse mirroring esoteric art. Then there's the lingering question of why, despite over 60 confessed suspects and countless theories, not a single lead has ever held up under scrutiny. It's as if the truth itself is being guarded by forces beyond the mundane. 75 years later, the Black Dahlia case remains a wound that refuses to heal. Whether fueled by paranormal energy or the sheer weight of its brutality, it stands as a grim reminder that some mysteries aren't just unsolved, they're alive, whispering from the edges of our understanding, demanding answers we may never be able to give. In February 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers set out into Russia's Ural Mountains, their tents pitched on the snowy slopes of a place later known as Dyatlov Pass. Weeks later, search teams would find those tents ripped open from the inside, abandoned in such haste that the hikers had fled without shoes or proper clothing, some still in their socks, others barely dressed for the sub-zero temperatures. Their bodies were scattered across the mountainside, some with unimaginable injuries, fractured skulls, crushed ribs, even one hiker with her tongue torn out. The official explanation, a compelling natural force, but to this day no one agrees on what that force could have been. The sheer strangeness of the scene immediately sparked suspicion. Why would seasoned mountaineers slash their own tent open to escape into -30-degree weather? Why were some victims' clothes found to have high levels of radiation? And most chilling of all, why did forensic reports note that some of their internal injuries resembled the kind of trauma seen in high-speed car crashes, with no external wounds to explain them? The Soviet government quickly sealed the case, fueling decades of speculation. Mainstream theories range from the plausible to the downright eerie, avalanche. Possible, but experts point out the slope wasn't steep enough for a deadly slide, and no evidence of one was found. Infrasound. Some suggest wind patterns could have generated low-frequency waves, inducing panic and irrational behavior, but that doesn't account for the physical trauma. Then there's the military angle. Declassified documents hint at nearby parachute mine tests, which might explain the mysterious orange lights witnesses reported in the sky that night. But if it was a secret experiment gone wrong, why were the hikers allowed to venture so close? Supernatural explanations aren't in short supply either. Indigenous Mansi people have long spoken of vengeful spirits in those mountains, and some researchers point to the hikers' own camera footage, grainy images that seem to show strange, humanoid figures lurking in the trees. Others believe the group stumbled into a UFO hotspot, citing reports of metallic debris found near the site. Perhaps the most unsettling detail of all is the lack of resolution. Modern reinvestigations, armed with better technology, still can't fully reconstruct what happened that night. The Dyatlov Pass Incident isn't just a cold case, it's a collision of the natural and the inexplicable, a moment where a routine expedition spiraled into something far darker. Whether the truth lies in hidden government files, freak weather phenomena, or something beyond our understanding, one thing's certain: those frozen slopes still hold secrets they aren't ready to give up. On a quiet August night in 1977, a radio telescope at Ohio State University's Big Ear Observatory captured something that would ignite debates for decades, a signal so extraordinary that the astronomer who discovered it scrawled, "Wow." In red ink right on the printout, for 72 seconds, a burst of radio waves surged from the constellation Sagittarius, blazing 30 times louder than the cosmic background noise. It wasn't static or interference. It wasn't a satellite or a passing aircraft. This signal matched the exact frequency scientists had predicted an extraterrestrial transmission might use: 1420 MHz, a band where hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, naturally resonates. For one brief, electrifying moment, it seemed like humanity might not be alone after all. The WOW signal's precision is what makes it so tantalizing. It wasn't a random blip, it followed the curve of Earth's rotation, fading in and out as the telescope's field of view drifted across the sky, just as a distant celestial source should. Astronomer Jerry Amon, who first spotted the anomaly, spent years ruling out terrestrial explanations. No military exercises, no spacecraft, no equipment malfunctions could account for it. The signal's narrow frequency range also suggested artificial origin. Natural cosmic phenomena usually emit across a broad spectrum. Yet despite Amon's meticulous efforts and dozens of follow-up scans of the same patch of sky, the signal never repeated. It was as if the universe had whispered a secret, then clammed up forever. Skeptics have offered alternative explanations, though none quite fit. Some suggest it was a reflected signal from Earth, bouncing off space debris, but no known objects were in the right position at the time. Others propose a passing comet, yet none were recorded in that region of space in 1977. The most haunting possibility: the signal was exactly what it appeared to be, a deliberate transmission from an intelligent source, perhaps a beacon or a fragment of alien communication, drifting for light years before briefly brushing against our instruments. Modern astronomers haven't given up. Projects like the Breakthrough Listen initiative have revisited Sagittarius with far more sensitive equipment, hoping to catch another whisper. But the WOW signal remains stubbornly unique, a cosmic flare that burned just long enough to sear itself into history before vanishing without a trace. Whether it was a fleeting cosmic coincidence, an undetected anomaly, or the closest we've ever come to proof we're not alone, one thing's certain: that silent, starry night in Ohio, the universe asked a question we're still trying to answer. Deep in the forests of Nova Scotia, a small island holds a secret that has bankrupted fortunes, broken hearts, and consumed lives for more than 200 years. It began in 1795 when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis spotted something peculiar: a circular depression in the ground, an old pulley hanging from a tree, and whispers of pirate gold buried long ago. What started as a simple dig soon spiraled into North America's most infamous treasure hunt, the Oak Island Money Pit. But this wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a labyrinth of engineered horrors, flood tunnels that filled with seawater the moment diggers breached certain depths, layers of coconut fiber and oak logs spaced precisely every 10 feet, even stone tablets inscribed with cryptic symbols. Whoever built this didn't just hide treasure, they designed a gauntlet to ensure no one would ever retrieve it. Theories about what lies at the bottom read like a history of the occult. Some believe it's the lost treasure of Captain Kidd, the infamous pirate who supposedly confessed on the gallows to burying riches beyond measure somewhere along the Nova Scotia coast. Others argue it's far older, that the Knights Templar, fleeing persecution in the 14th century, smuggled sacred relics like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail across the Atlantic, sealing them away with medieval engineering prowess. Then there's the Shakespearean twist. Could Francis Bacon have hidden proof that he authored the Bard's works, encoded in lead sheets deep within the pit? But for every hopeful treasure hunter, there are just as many skeptics. Geologists point to natural sinkholes and limestone erosion, suggesting the so-called booby traps might be nothing more than porous rock collapsing under centuries of digging. Others suspect an elaborate, centuries-long hoax, a prank by early settlers that snowballed into a global obsession. After all, despite exhaustive searches using sonar, drills, and even submarines, no definitive treasure has ever been found. Just shattered dreams, drained bank accounts, and 6 deaths, including one man who suffocated when a sudden flood trapped him in a narrow shaft. Yet the allure refuses to die. Modern excavations continue, funded by billionaires and televised for the world. Each new discovery, a centuries-old Spanish coin, a scrap of parchment, a glint of metal, reignites the fever. Perhaps the real treasure isn't gold or jewels, but the mystery itself, a riddle that taunts us with the possibility of answers just out of reach, buried beneath layers of mud, myth, and human desperation. Because if there's one thing Oak Island teaches us, it's that the greatest treasures aren't always the ones we find. They're the ones we spend our lives chasing. The Atlantic Ocean, December 5, 1872. The crew of the day Gracia spots a vessel adrift near the Azores, her sails partially set, her hull undamaged yet eerily silent. As they board the Mary Celeste, they find a mystery that will baffle historians for centuries. The ship is perfectly seaworthy, her cargo of industrial alcohol untouched. The crew's personal belongings, watches, pipes, even a child's doll lie undisturbed. There's food in the galley, water in the barrels, and the ship's logbook, its last entry dated 9 days prior, shows no signs of distress. But not a single soul remains aboard. 10 people, including the captain's wife and young daughter, have vanished without a trace. Theories range from the mundane to the fantastically bizarre. Maritime experts first suspected a sudden storm, but the sails, though tattered, weren't shredded as they would be in a violent squall. Others proposed a pirate attack, yet nothing was stolen. No signs of violence marred the decks, and pirates wouldn't have spared the valuable cargo. Then there's the alcohol. Some suggest fumes from the barrels could have ignited fears of an imminent explosion, prompting the crew to abandon ship in panic. But why wouldn't they take the lifeboat, later found still lashed to the vessel? This is where speculation takes a stranger turn. Witnesses reported a sword and what appeared to be faint bloodstains near the rail, though tests later debunked this. Some whispered of sea monsters, pointing to legends of giant squid or other deep-sea horrors that might have dragged the crew overboard. Even paranormal explanations emerged: time rifts, alien abductions, or a curse tied to the ship's troubled past. 2 previous captains had died under mysterious circumstances. Modern analysis offers more grounded possibilities. A waterspout, a tornado-like vortex over the ocean, could have terrified the crew into fleeing, only for the weather to clear before damage was done. Or perhaps a localized underwater earthquake released toxic gases, causing temporary madness or hallucinations. The most compelling theory involves a faulty chronometer. If the crew miscalculated their position, they might have believed they were closer to land than they were, abandoning ship only to drown in the vast Atlantic. Yet none of these fully explain why no bodies or wreckage were ever recovered, or why the lifeboat was left behind. The Mary Celeste endures as a maritime ghost story, a floating enigma that refuses to surrender its secrets. Whether tragic human error, an unseen natural phenomenon, or something far stranger, her empty decks remain one of history's greatest unresolved riddles, a silent ship sailing forever through the fog of speculation. In the backwoods of early 19th century Tennessee, a nightmare took root in the Bell family's farm, a force so malicious it would become America's most infamous poltergeist case. It began innocuously in 1815 with strange noises, knocks on the walls, gnawing sounds beneath the floorboards like rats with teeth of iron. But soon the disturbances escalated. Blankets were torn from beds, invisible hands slapped the children. A voice emerged, guttural, wheezing, mocking prayers and singing hymns off-key before dissolving into laughter. The entity called itself Kate, though history would remember it as the Bell Witch, a presence so relentless it allegedly drove John Bell to his grave and left a mark on American folklore that still lingers today. What sets the Bell Witch apart from other hauntings isn't just its violence, but its terrifying intelligence. Unlike mindless poltergeists, Kate held conversations, quoting sermons the family had heard weeks earlier or revealing secrets no outsider could know. She reserved particular cruelty for John Bell, poisoning his food and leaving him paralyzed on one side of his body, symptoms later verified by the family doctor. When Betsy Bell, the youngest daughter, became engaged, the witch shrieked for hours, vowing to prevent the marriage. Most chillingly, it seemed to feed on fear, growing stronger with each act of defiance. Even skepticism crumbled in the face of witnesses. Neighbors, clergymen, even the future President Andrew Jackson reportedly visited the farm. Legend claims Jackson's men fled after their wagon abruptly halted, wheels locked as if gripped by an unseen force. Jackson himself supposedly declared, "I'd rather face the entire British Army than spend another night here." Though historians debate the authenticity of his visit, the story embedded the bell witch in national consciousness, blending frontier superstition with a tale too detailed to dismiss as mere folklore. Modern investigations have only deepened the mystery. Geologists point to naturally occurring underground caves beneath the farm, suggesting infrasound inaudible low-frequency vibrations could explain hallucinations and unease. Psychologists propose mass hysteria amplified by the isolation of rural life, yet neither theory accounts for the specificity of the bell witch's taunts or the physical marks left on victims. Paranormal researchers still flock to Adams, Tennessee, where descendants of the bells guard the remnants of the farm. Some claim recordings in the area capture disjointed whispers, while others insist the witch never left, that she lingers waiting for fresh torment. Whether vengeful spirit, elaborate hoax, or something between, the bell witch endures as a cultural specter. Her story birthed countless adaptations from novels to films, but none capture the raw terror of the original accounts. Because here's the unsettling truth: 2 centuries later, we still can't say for certain what tormented the Bell family. Was it a ghost, a demon, or does the land itself remember their suffering, replaying it like a cursed echo across generations? The answer, if it exists, remains as elusive as the laughter that once echoed through those Tennessee woods. October 28, 1943. The USS Eldridge, a naval destroyer docked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, was reportedly the center of an experiment so classified, so radical, that its very existence has been hotly denied for decades. According to legend, scientists working with the military sought to render the ship invisible not just to radar, but to the naked eye. Using Einstein's unified field theory and massive electromagnetic generators, they supposedly bent light around the vessel, cloaking it in a shimmering green haze. But something went catastrophically wrong. Witnesses claimed the Eldridge didn't just vanish, it briefly teleported hundreds of miles to Norfolk, Virginia, before reappearing in Philadelphia. And the crew, those who survived, were said to have suffered horrors beyond comprehension. Men fused into the steel bulkheads, others driven insane, a few vanishing mid-sentence and never returning. The first whispers of this experiment surfaced in the 1950s, when a mysterious figure named Carl Allen, writing under the pseudonym Carlos Allende, sent rambling letters to astronomer Morris Jessup. Allen described the event in chilling detail, alleging he'd witnessed it from a nearby merchant ship. His accounts were wild sailors bursting into flames, disembodied screams echoing from empty corridors, a lingering, static charge in the air that made bystanders' hair stand on end. The Navy promptly dismissed the claims as science fiction, but conspiracy theorists pounced. Declassified documents later revealed the military had been testing degaussing technology to make ships magnetically invisible to mines. A far cry from teleportation, yet enough to fuel speculation that darker truths were being buried. Skeptics have dismantled the story piece by piece. Sailors from the Eldridge's crew came forward to confirm they'd never experienced such an event, and naval records show the ship wasn't even in Philadelphia on the alleged date. Physicists scoff at the idea that 1940s technology could manipulate spacetime to that degree, yet the myth persists, bolstered by eerie coincidences. Why did Morris Jessup, after investigating the claims, die under suspicious circumstances, an apparent suicide that friends insisted was out of character? Why do some veterans swear they were ordered to silence regarding Project Rainbow, the experiment's alleged codename? Perhaps the Philadelphia experiment endures because it taps into deeper fears, the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition, the secrecy of wartime governments, and the thin line between cutting-edge research and something far more unnerving. Whether a case of mistaken identity, an elaborate hoax, or a suppressed truth, the story of the USS Eldridge reminds us that some legends are harder to sink than any ship. March 31, 1922, A quiet farmstead nestled in the woods near Hinterkaifeck, Germany, became the stage for one of history's most chilling unsolved crimes. When neighbors noticed the Gruber family had stopped attending church, they ventured to the farm only to find all 6 inhabitants brutally murdered. The victims, ranging from a 70-year-old patriarch to a 2-year-old child, had been bludgeoned with a pickaxe, their bodies hidden in the barn as if the killer wanted them undiscovered for days. But the horror didn't end there. Clues at the scene suggested something even more unnerving. The murderer hadn't just struck and fled, they'd lingered. Days before the killings, the family reported eerie disturbances, footsteps in the attic, a mysterious set of keys gone missing, even the unsettling discovery of a newspaper they didn't recognize. After the murders, fresh footprints led from the woods to the house, but none led back. Locals whispered that someone had been living undetected in the farmhouse for days, perhaps hiding in the very attic where the family heard noises. The killer knew the layout intimately. They'd fed the cattle and tended the stove, maintaining a macabre facade of normalcy while the bodies lay nearby. Theories about the culprit spiral from the plausible to the paranormal. Some suspect a resentful former farmhand, angry over a wage dispute. Others point to a neighbor who eerily predicted the murders weeks earlier, claiming the family would soon all be dead. Then there's the darker angle, rumors of incest and abuse within the household, suggesting the killings were an act of twisted retribution. But none of these explain the most baffling detail: why the killers stayed or how they vanished without a trace. Paranormal investigators have since latched onto the case, citing reports of disembodied voices and phantom footsteps still heard near the farm's ruins. Some believe the land itself was cursed, noting that earlier owners had also met violent ends. Skeptics argue the legend grew from rural superstition, but the facts resist easy dismissal. Even the official case files were destroyed during World War II, leaving behind only whispers and speculation. What makes Hinterkaifeck so unsettling isn't just the brutality, it's the intimacy. This wasn't a random attack, it was a meticulous execution followed by days of cold, calculated silence. Whether the work of a vengeful human or something more spectral, the truth remains buried, just like the Gruber family's unmarked graves. And perhaps that's the most haunting part. Some mysteries don't just defy explanation, they cling to the shadows, refusing to let go. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, November 15, 1966. 2 young couples driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant spot something impossible. A towering figure standing nearly 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes and massive wings folded against its back. Before they can react, it spreads those wings, reportedly spanning 10 feet, and lifts into the sky, chasing their car at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. This wasn't some fleeting shadow or trick of the light. The couple's accounts matched perfectly, down to the creature's unnerving habit of gliding without a single flap of its wings. Within weeks, dozens more would report the same entity, dubbing it Mothman, a name pulled straight from local folklore. But what began as eerie sightings would soon spiral into something darker, tying the creature to one of America's deadliest bridge disasters. The Mothman wasn't your typical cryptid. Unlike Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, this being seemed almost purposeful in its appearances, as if drawn to tragedy. Witnesses described an intelligence in its movements, sometimes hovering near power lines, other times perched on rooftops as though observing the town. Even skeptics couldn't dismiss the sheer volume of reports. Over 100 sightings in 12 months, from credible sources like police officers, pilots, and military personnel. Oddly, the sightings often coincided with electrical disturbances, car radios emitting static, televisions switching channels on their own, even phone calls filled with an unearthly clicking noise. Then, on December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge, Point Pleasant's vital river crossing, collapsed during rush hour, plunging 46 people to their deaths. The timing felt too stark to ignore. Mothman sightings ceased immediately after the disaster, sparking theories that the creature had been a harbinger of doom. Paranormal researcher John Keel, who documented the phenomenon, became convinced the entity was a superspectre, a being existing outside our understanding of time, appearing before catastrophic events to warn or unsettle witnesses. Others linked it to UFO activity, noting that many witnesses reported strange lights in the sky alongside Mothman encounters. Decades later, the legend refuses to die. Modern sightings persist, often clustering around new disasters from Chernobyl to 9/11. Scientists offer more grounded explanations: misidentified sandhill cranes, whose red eye markings and large wingspans match some descriptions, or mass hysteria fueled by Keel's sensational book. But for Point Pleasant residents who lived through those dark months, no theory quite explains why the Mothman's presence felt so deliberate, or why its final appearance marked not just an ending but a terrifying prelude. Christmas Eve, 1945, the Sodder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, burned to the ground in the dead of night, a tragedy made infinitely more horrifying by what investigators failed to find. 5 children, ranging from 5 to 14 years old, simply vanished. No remains, no traces, no logical explanation. What began as a fire quickly became one of America's most baffling missing persons cases, tangled in contradictions, alleged cover-ups, and whispers that those children might still be alive somewhere, waiting to come home. From the start, nothing about the fire made sense. Witnesses reported seeing strange flashes in the sky before the blaze erupted, and neighbors claimed the flames burned with unnatural intensity, far hotter and faster than a typical house fire. Even stranger, the parents, George and Jenny Sodder, managed to escape with 4 of their children, but the other 5 were somehow unreachable. The stairway to their bedroom had mysteriously collapsed, and attempts to rescue them were blocked by a ladder that had inexplicably gone missing from the side of the house. Firefighters arrived late, some say deliberately delayed, and by morning only charred timbers remained. Yet when authorities sifted through the ashes, they found no bones, no teeth, nothing to suggest the children had perished. Cremation experts would later testify that even in the hottest fires, dental remains and bone fragments should have survived. So where were they? The official explanation that the fire was accidental and the children's bodies were completely incinerated did little to satisfy the Sodders. George, a fiercely determined man, spent the rest of his life gathering evidence that pointed to something far more sinister. He discovered the family's phone line had been cut before the fire. A witness came forward claiming to have seen the missing children being forced into a car that night. Even more chilling, a local coal deliveryman confessed on his deathbed that he'd been paid to help kidnap the children, a claim authorities dismissed as the ramblings of a dying man. Theories swirled like smoke. Some suspected retaliation. George was an outspoken critic of Mussolini, and rumors suggested fascist sympathizers in their tight-knit Italian-American community might have targeted the family. Others whispered about human trafficking, pointing to reports of the children being spotted in New York years later. Jenny received anonymous letters with cryptic clues, including a photo of a young man bearing a striking resemblance to one of her missing sons, postmarked from Florida. But every lead hit a dead end. Decades later, the case remains unsolved. The Sodder family's billboard, pleading for information, stood on Route 16 for over 50 years before finally being taken down. Were those children stolen? Did they escape the fire only to be lost in some darker way? The truth may lie buried under layers of time and speculation, but one thing's certain: this wasn't just a fire. It was a wound that never healed, a question that refuses to fade with the ashes. And for those who still search for answers, the flames of that Christmas Eve night are still burning. On a quiet August afternoon in 1966, 2 well-dressed men were found dead on a grassy hill in Rio de Janeiro, their bodies carefully arranged beneath a sweeping blue sky. At first glance, they might have seemed like businessmen taking an ill-fated nap, except for the lead masks covering their faces. the cryptic note tucked in one man's pocket, and the small glass vial filled with an unknown liquid resting near their hands. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a riddle wrapped in enigma, an incident so bizarre it would become known as the Lead Masks case, a mystery that still taunts investigators with its unanswered questions. The victims, electronics technician Miguel José Viana and factory worker Manuel Pereira da Cruz, showed no signs of violence, no wounds, no struggle, nothing to suggest foul play. Autopsies revealed nothing more than traces of poison in their systems, yet the circumstances defied all logic. Their suits were immaculate, their posture almost serene. Beside them lay a note with a single, cryptic instruction. After completing the agreed mission, protect the metals and wait for the designated signal. Even more unsettling, 2 empty water bottles and a handheld radio modified to pick up frequencies far outside the normal range. Authorities initially dismissed it as a bizarre suicide pact, but the details refused to fit. Why the lead masks which blocked all vision and muffled sound? Why the strange emphasis on metals? And why, when investigators traced the men's final days, did they uncover a paper trail suggesting obsession not with death, but with something far more otherworldly? Witnesses reported the pair had spent months studying advanced physics, dabbling in amateur radio astronomy, and even visiting local ufologist groups. One acquaintance claimed they spoke of contact with beings who'd given them a mission, one requiring precise timing and equipment. Theories spiral in every direction. Some believed the men were amateur scientists attempting to intercept alien transmissions, using the lead masks as crude shielding against radiation or electromagnetic interference. Others suspect Cold War espionage, that they'd stumbled into a clandestine operation poisoned to silence them. Then there's the occult angle. Brazilian folklore speaks of rituals where lead is used to trap spirits or enhance psychic vision. Could they have been attempting to pierce the veil between worlds, only to miscalculate fatally? Even the location adds to the strangeness. The hill where they died, Morro do Vintame, has long been a hotspot for UFO sightings. Locals whispered of strange lights in the sky that very night, and investigators later found scorch marks in the grass, though whether from a mundane source or something far stranger, no one could say. The case was officially closed, but the truth refuses to stay buried. Decades later, researchers still pore over those scant clues, wondering if the answer lies in the stars, in spycraft, or somewhere in between. What makes the lead masks case endure isn't just its eerie details, it's the way it dances on the edge of multiple mysteries without surrendering to any. These weren't reckless thrill seekers, they were methodical, even meticulous in their preparations. Yet somewhere between their notes and that lonely hillside, their plan veered into the inexplicable. Were they visionaries chasing a truth beyond our world, pawns in a game they didn't understand, or simply 2 men who stepped too far into the unknown, leaving behind only masks, a note, and a question mark etched into history? Chicago, November 22, 1987. Just after 9 in the evening, viewers settling in to watch an episode of Doctor Who on WTTW suddenly found their screens hijacked by something far stranger than any science fiction. For nearly 2 minutes, a figure wearing an uncanny rubber mask, a warped imitation of the then-popular Max Headroom character, flashed across their televisions, spewing garbled audio and jerky movements against a spinning background. Some heard distorted phrases like, "Your love is fading," or "Catch the wave," while others caught references to local radio stations and even a muffled laugh as the intruder smacked his own rear with a fly swatter. Then, as abruptly as it began, the signal cut out. Normal programming resumed, leaving thousands of bewildered viewers wondering if they just witnessed a technical glitch or something far more unsettling. This wasn't just random interference. The broadcast intrusion, executed with shocking precision, represented one of the most brazen acts of electronic piracy in television history. Whoever pulled it off had tapped directly into the transmitter feed, overriding the station's signal with their own pre-recorded video. Engineers later traced the breach to a rooftop antenna near the Sears Tower, where the hijacker likely broadcast their signal at the exact frequency used by WTTW relay. The sophistication suggested inside knowledge, or at least a level of technical expertise far beyond the average prankster. Yet for all the planning, the content itself was pure absurdity. A chaotic collage of pop culture references, disjointed slogans, and eerie distortions that felt almost dreamlike in their randomness. Authorities launched an immediate investigation, but the trail went cold. The FBI questioned amateur radio enthusiasts and television technicians, even analyzing the distinctive flicker of the video for clues. They found nothing, no demands, no manifesto, not even a clear motive beyond the thrill of disruption. Some speculated it was an inside job, a disgruntled employee with access to equipment. Others pointed to underground video pirate groups that flourished in the 80s, treating broadcast hijackings as a form of anarchic art. Then there were the darker theories, whispers of psychological warfare experiments, or even a coded message meant for someone specific, buried in the static. What makes the max headroom intrusion endure isn't just the mystery of who did it, it's the lingering unease of how easily our trusted systems can be violated. In an era before digital encryption, a single person with the right knowledge could hijack the airwaves, if only for a moment, and imprint their strangeness onto thousands of unsuspecting screens. The hijacker's identity remains one of the internet's oldest unsolved puzzles, fueling documentaries, Reddit threads, and even a bizarre confession from a former TV engineer in 2013, though his claims were quickly debunked. Perhaps the most haunting detail, the intrusion happened twice that night. Before hitting WTTW, the same masked figure briefly overtook a sports broadcast on WGN, suggesting this wasn't a fluke but a deliberate, rehearsed performance. And then nothing, no repeat offenses, no boasts, just silence. Whoever slipped into Chicago's airwaves that night vanished as completely as the analog signals they exploited, leaving behind only questions, static, and the faint echo of a distorted laugh. On a storm-lashed cluster of rocks 20 miles west of Scotland's Outer Hebrides stands the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, a lonely sentinel against the fury of the North Atlantic. It was here in December 1900 that three seasoned keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Jucat, and Donald MacArthur, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a scene so unsettling it would fuel speculation for over a century. When the relief crew arrived on December 26th, they found the lighthouse tower intact, its lamp meticulously cleaned and refueled, but the keepers were gone. A single chair lay overturned in the kitchen, an untouched meal of stew and bread sat on the table, and the clocks, all of them, had stopped at the exact same time. The official logbook entries only deepened the mystery. The final note, dated December 15th, described severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before, followed by an eerie addendum, storm ended. Sea calm, God is over all, but the next pages were blank. No distress signals had been sent. The men's oilskin coats still hung neatly by the door, ruling out any sudden dash into the tempest. Even more baffling, the lighthouse's exterior gate and supply crane showed no damage despite the alleged hurricane-force winds. It was as if the keepers had simply dissolved into thin air. Theories split into two camps, the pragmatic and the paranormal. Maritime authorities initially blamed a freak wave, suggesting the men had been swept off the rocks while securing equipment. Yet veterans of the service scoffed. These were experienced keepers who knew better than to risk the cliffs in a storm. Others proposed a fight or mutiny, but no signs of violence were found. Then there were the whispers from local fishermen, who'd long claimed the isles were haunted by the Phantom of the Seven Hunters, a spectral force said to lure sailors to their doom. Some even swore they'd seen strange lights flickering around the lighthouse in the days before the disappearance. modern investigators have revisited the case with fresh eyes. Weather records from 1900 reveal no major storms in the area on December 15th, contradicting the logbook. Could the keepers have hallucinated the storm, victims of carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty stove? Or did they witness something far more inexplicable, a rift in the fabric of reality, a phenomenon beyond the understanding of their time? The truth may lie somewhere between the rational and the uncanny. What makes the Flannan Isles mystery endure isn't just the unanswered questions, it's the chilling normality of the scene they left behind. A half-eaten meal, a toppled chair, time itself frozen on the clocks. These weren't men who fled in panic. They were men who paused mid-action, as if the universe had simply pressed pause. Whether claimed by the sea, a spectral force, or some yet unknown phenomenon, their story remains a stark reminder that even in our most guarded outposts, the line between the known and the unfathomable is thinner than we dare admit. On December 1, 1948, beachgoers in Somerton, Australia, stumbled upon the body of a well-dressed man lying peacefully against a seawall. His clothes were immaculate, his shoes polished, but there was no wallet, no identification, not even the labels in his garments, which had been carefully snipped away. The only clue, a scrap of paper tucked deep into a hidden pocket bearing two cryptic words, tamam shud. Translated from Persian, it means ended or finished. And with that single phrase, one of history's most perplexing unsolved mysteries began. The autopsy revealed nothing but more questions. The man had no signs of violence, yet his spleen was massively enlarged 3 times its normal size, and his pupils were dilated in a way that suggested poisoning. But no known toxin was found. Even stranger, despite a nationwide appeal, no one came forward to claim him. He wasn't in any missing persons records. His fingerprints matched no known criminal or military database. It was as if he'd materialized from thin air, perfectly groomed for a meeting with death. Then came the breakthrough, or so it seemed. Months later, a local man turned in a copy of Persian poet Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, found stuffed into the backseat of his car. Inside, the final page had been torn out, the very page containing the phrase Tamam Shud. But this wasn't just any book. Scrawled on the back cover was a sequence of letters, jumbled as if in code. W.R. Goababd Mlioi W.T. Bim Panet Mliaboyak. Cryptographers and intelligence agencies pored over the cipher for decades, but it resisted all attempts at decryption. Was it a spy's last message, a lover's final goodbye? Some believe the letters correspond to a one-time pad encryption, a method used by intelligence operatives during World War II, while others argue it's nothing more than a random jumble, a red herring in an already tangled case. Theories spiral into the realm of Cold War intrigue. The man's unusually developed calves suggested he might have been a ballet dancer or a spy trained in clandestine movement. His teeth showed signs of dental work uncommon in Australia at the time, hinting at Eastern European origins. Then there's the woman, the only person ever linked to the case. In a nearby suburb, a nurse named Jessica Thompson reportedly owned an identical Rubaiyat, though she denied knowing the dead man. Yet when shown a plaster cast of his face, she nearly fainted. Years later, her own daughter would claim Jessica had lied, that she did know him and that his name might have been Boxall, but no records of a Boxall matching his description ever surfaced. Even modern technology hasn't cracked the case. In 2022, researchers claim to have identified the man through DNA and genealogical databases, but the evidence remains hotly contested. Meanwhile, the cipher still mocks investigators from the pages of history, daring someone, anyone, to uncover its secret. Was he a discarded spy, a heartbroken wanderer, or something else entirely? The only certainty is this: the Somerton man's story didn't end with Tamam Shud. It's a riddle that refuses to be finished, a ghost in the machine of history waiting for its final verse. Nestled in the remote Uinta Basin of Utah lies a stretch of land so steeped in terror and baffling phenomena that even hardened scientists hesitate to spend a night there. Skinwalker Ranch, named after the shape-shifting entities of Navajo legend, isn't just another hotspot for UFO sightings. It's a melting pot of the inexplicable, where lights in the sky dance alongside phantom wolves, invisible forces shove researchers to the ground, and livestock are found mutilated with surgical precision. Since the 1990s, this 480-acre property has been ground zero for encounters that defy categorization, blending high strangeness ufology with something far older and darker. The modern saga began when the Sherman family purchased the ranch in 1994, only to flee 18 months later, their sanity hanging by a thread. They spoke of a predator unlike any other, a massive wolf-like creature that shrugged off bullets before vanishing into thin air. Their cattle were found drained of blood with puncture wounds suggesting no known predator. Doors slammed on their own, invisible presences stalked the halls, then came the lights, orbs that streaked across the sky before hovering just beyond the tree line as if watching. Enter billionaire Robert Bigelow, founder of the National Institute for Discovery Science. Intrigued by the reports, he bought the ranch in 1996 and deployed a team of scientists, military personnel, and sensors to document the activity. What they recorded reads like a script from a sci-fi horror film. Thermal cameras picked up humanoid figures that disappeared when approached. Electromagnetic detectors spiked inexplicably, even in areas with no power sources. One researcher claimed an unseen force lifted him off his feet before slamming him into the dirt. Another described a portal-like vortex opening in the sky, swallowing a calf whole. But Skinwalker's terror predates modern ownership by centuries. The Ute and Navajo tribes have long considered the land cursed, speaking of the Skinwalkers, malevolent shamans who could assume animal forms. Tribal elders warned settlers to avoid the area, recounting stories of vanishing hunters and shadow creatures that mimicked human voices. Some researchers believe the ranch sits atop an ancient interdimensional crossroads, a place where the veil between worlds wears thin. What makes Skinwalker Ranch unique isn't just the volume of phenomena, it's the chilling intelligence behind them. Witnesses describe encounters where entities seem to study human reactions, adapting their tactics like predators testing prey. In 2016, the Pentagon's secretive Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program even investigated the ranch, declassifying footage of unidentified aerial objects exhibiting physics-defying maneuvers. Yet despite decades of scrutiny, no single theory, be it extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or occult, fully explains the horrors witnessed there. Skeptics argue it's a cocktail of hoaxes, folklore, and pareidolia. But for those who have stood on that soil, felt the air hum with unseen energy, or locked eyes with something that shouldn't exist, the ranch poses a terrifying question. What if some places on Earth aren't meant to be understood, only feared? The land remains, its secrets intact, waiting for the next foolhardy soul to trespass where science and legend collide. The quiet seaside town of Haverford, West in Wales, held a secret, one whispered in a language no one else could understand. Identical twins June and Jennifer Gibbons, born in 1963, were inseparable from the start, communicating in a rapid-fire dialect only they comprehended. To outsiders, their bond seemed impenetrable, a private world where words flowed freely between them but never beyond. But as they grew older, their silence stretched beyond mere shyness into something far more unsettling. The girls spoke to no one but each other, moving through life like ghosts in their own home, their voices locked away behind an unbreakable pact. At school, teachers described them as electrically intelligent yet utterly unreachable. Classmates mocked their silence, driving the twins deeper into isolation. By adolescence, their communication with the outside world had dwindled to near zero. They wrote elaborate stories in notebooks, dark, fantastical tales of control and rebellion, but refused to share them aloud. psychologists diagnosed selective mutism, but the truth felt more sinister. The twins themselves spoke of being two halves of one person, as if their identities had fused into something beyond ordinary sisterhood. Then came the prediction, whispered between them like a sacred vow: to break free, one of them would have to die. What happened next blurred the line between psychiatric anomaly and the paranormal. In their early 20s, after a series of arson and theft charges landed them in Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility, their behavior grew even more ritualistic. They began speaking only in unison, their voices eerily synchronized. Staff reported catching them frozen in identical poses, as if controlled by some unseen force. Then, in 1993, after years of insisting, "When Jennifer goes, I will be free," the twins were transferred to a less restrictive clinic. Within hours of arrival, Jennifer was dead. No foul play, no discernible cause, just an abrupt, inexplicable end to a life that had seemed bound to her sisters by something deeper than biology. June, true to their prophecy, began speaking freely for the first time. Psychiatrists point to folie à a shared psychotic disorder, as the likeliest explanation. The twins' intense isolation, coupled with the pressures of racism and bullying in their predominantly white community, could have warped their reality into a private symbiosis. But those who knew them sensed something stranger at work. Family members recounted moments when the twins seemed to share thoughts, finishing each other's silent sentences with uncanny precision. Jennifer's autopsy revealed a heart inflamed beyond medical explanation, as if her body had simply stopped. June, now living a quiet life in Wales, rarely speaks of her sister, leaving the truth of their bond buried in whispers only they ever truly understood. Were the Gibbons twins victims of a rare psychological phenomenon, or was their connection something beyond science? Folklore from cultures worldwide speaks of twin souls, beings so linked that one cannot survive without the other. Some researchers suggest extreme cases of telepathy or even parasitic psychic energy, but perhaps the most haunting possibility is the simplest, that in the absence of understanding, the human mind can forge bonds so profound they defy life itself. Jennifer's death freed June's voice, but it also left behind a question echoing through the decades: when two people share a world no one else can enter, who decides which one gets to leave? Imagine walking down a city street when your foot scrapes against something strange, a worn tile embedded in the asphalt, its cryptic message barely visible beneath years of wear. Toynbee idea, movie 2001, resurrect dead on planet Jupiter. This wasn't graffiti or random vandalism. Since the 1980s, hundreds of these mysterious tiles have appeared across the United States, South America, and even Europe, each bearing the same eerie phrase. Who created them? Why Jupiter? And what dark or brilliant mind became so obsessed with this idea that they spent decades hammering it into the streets of the world? The Toynbee tiles, named for historian Arnold Toynbee and eerily referencing Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, aren't just oddities. They're a global puzzle, hand-carved into linoleum and pressed into hot asphalt to melt permanently into the road. Their messages vary slightly. Some demand media attention, others reference shadowy killers, and a few even accuse the Rockefeller family of suppressing the Toynbee idea. But the core remains cryptic, a call to resurrect the dead on Jupiter using technology from the silver screen. The tiles' exact origins are unknown, but their trail leads back to Philadelphia, where reports of a reclusive artist named James Morasco claimed he believed humanity's souls could be reborn on distant planets through television signals. Theories about their meaning spiral from the philosophical to the conspiratorial. Some link Toynbee's writings about societal rebirth to Kubrick's vision of cosmic evolution, suggesting the tiles advocate a literal transcendence of death through space colonization. Others see darker undertones, references to murderers and traitors, hint at paranoia or a grudge against powerful elites. Then there's the bizarre overlap with a shortwave radio broadcast from the 1980s, where a man ranted about Jupiter's colonization in a voice eerily similar to descriptions of Morasco. The hunt for the creator took a surreal turn in 2013, when a documentary crew traced the tiles to a Philadelphia man named Severino Sevi Verner, a reclusive eccentric with a history of mailing bizarre manifestos to news stations. But Verner died before confirming his role, leaving behind only a basement filled with linoleum scraps and cryptic notes. What makes the Toynbee tiles endure isn't just their mystery, it's their physicality. These aren't digital memes or fleeting graffiti. They're artifacts painstakingly crafted and deliberately placed to outlive their maker. New tiles still appear occasionally, their messages fading under tires and time, yet their questions linger. Was this an art project, a manifesto, or did someone truly believe the dead could wake beneath Jupiter's storms, their souls broadcast through the static of space? For now, the streets keep their secrets and the tiles remain whispering to those who bother to look down. The Mississippi River should have been calm the night the SS Iron Mountain vanished. No storms, no logs floating in the water, no warnings of trouble. Yet when the steamboat failed to dock in Vicksburg on the morning of June 5, 1872, search parties found nothing but an eerie silence stretching across the riverbanks. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no bodies. 55 passengers and crew had simply ceased to exist, swallowed whole by the water without so much as a single cry for help. Even veteran river pilots were baffled. A vessel that size couldn't disappear without a trace unless the river itself had opened up to claim it. Natural explanations crept in first, as they always do. Some speculated the Iron Mountain struck a submerged snag, a common hazard in the era of wooden hulls, but seasoned boatmen pointed out the river was unusually high that season, leaving few hidden obstacles. Others whispered of a boiler explosion, though no debris or soot-stained flotsam ever surfaced. The most chilling theory, a sudden cave-in of the riverbed, a phenomenon called a bottom drop, where shifting sediment could suck a ship down in seconds. Yet even that didn't explain the absence of personal effects luggage, barrels, even floating furniture that should have marked the disaster. But the Mississippi has always been a place of legends, and the vanishing soon took on a supernatural hue. Locals recalled older stories of the river's hunger, how it sometimes demanded sacrifices. Choctaw oral traditions spoke of a spirit called the Lion of the Water, a shape-shifting entity that dragged the unwary beneath the waves. Even Mark Twain, who knew the river's moods better than most, wrote of its strange disappearances in Life on the Mississippi. Some swore they'd seen the Iron Mountain's ghostly silhouette drifting in the fog years later, its smokestacks billowing phantom steam. Then there were the whispers of sabotage. The ship had been carrying a fortune in cargo, cotton, sugar, and a sealed strongbox rumored to hold Union gold left over from the Civil War. Conspiracy theorists suggested a carefully staged hijacking, with the crew murdered and the vessel scuttled in some hidden tributary. But investigations turned up no evidence, no sudden wealth among rivermen, no stripped hull rotting in the bayous. The truth may never surface. The Iron Mountain's fate sits at the crossroads of history and folklore, a riddle wrapped in river mud. Whether claimed by natural forces, human treachery, or something far older, its disappearance stands as a stark reminder. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only remembered. And the Mississippi, with its dark currents and shifting secrets, keeps them well. Pontefract, England, 1966. For the Pritchard family, their modest house at 30 East Drive was supposed to be a fresh start. But within weeks, they realized something was terribly wrong. It began with harmless oddities, doors slamming on their own, puddles of water appearing out of nowhere, the faint scent of rotting flowers clinging to the air. Then came the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, pacing the upstairs hallway at night when no one was there. And then the shadow, a towering figure draped in black, its face hidden beneath a hood, watching from the corners of rooms before vanishing into thin air. This was the Black Monk of Pontefract, a presence so violent it would become one of Britain's most infamous poltergeist cases and leave a family broken in its wake. Unlike typical hauntings, the Black Monk didn't just linger, it escalated with terrifying precision. 15-year-old Diane Pritchard bore the brunt of its fury. She was dragged up the stairs by an invisible force, her body suspended in midair as if held by unseen hands. Deep, ragged scratches appeared on her skin, often spelling out words like die or go. The family's pet dog refused to enter certain rooms, whimpering at thresholds where the air seemed to thicken. Even more chilling, the entity seemed to feed off fear. When Diane's mother, Jean, defiantly shouted at it to leave, a porcelain figurine flew across the room, striking her square in the forehead. The message was clear: defiance came with consequences. What sets the Black Monk apart from other demonic cases is its historical ties. Local legends spoke of a Cluniac monk executed in the 16th century for unspeakable crimes, his spirit said to linger near the Pritchards' home, which stood on land once owned by the monastery. Some researchers believe the family unknowingly triggered his wrath when Diane played with a Ouija board in the house, though others argue the activity predated even that. Unlike the disembodied spirits of typical hauntings, the Black Monk exhibited traits of a true inhuman entity: intelligence, cruelty, and a disturbing ability to interact with the physical world. Comparisons to other notorious cases only deepen the mystery. The Enfield poltergeist, just a decade later, also centered around a young girl. But while Enfield's spirit mimicked voices and rattled furniture, the Black Monk's violence was far more personal, more calculated. The Amityville horror involved a demonic presence masquerading as a deceased murderer, yet Pontefract's entity never pretended to be human. It seemed to revel in its own malevolence, leaving behind not just scratches, but psychological scars that lingered long after the Pritchards fled their home. Even skeptics struggle to dismiss the sheer volume of evidence. Police officers witnessed objects moving on their own. A local journalist captured photographs of Diane's levitation, her body hovering inches above the bed. And then there were the recordings, guttural growls and whispers caught on tape, none of which could be traced to a human source. Modern paranormal investigators still debate whether the Black Monk was a demon, a residual echo of the executed monk's rage, or something even older, something that predates the land itself. The Pritchards abandoned 30 East Drive in 1974, but the Black Monk never left. Subsequent owners reported the same phenomena: shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, an oppressive weight in the air. Today, the house stands as a grim pilgrimage site for paranormal researchers, a place where the line between legend and reality blurs. Because unlike ghosts who merely replay their deaths, the Black Monk seems aware, patient, and worst of all, hungry. Its story forces us to ask, are some doors better left unopened? And if you knock loudly enough, what might answer? San Francisco, 1968. A moonlit parking lot becomes the stage for one of America's most infamous unsolved nightmares when a young couple is ambushed by a figure in a black executioner's hood. The attack is brutal, methodical, and just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the Zodiac killer would claim at least 5 victims, taunt police with cryptograms, and carve his name into history with a blend of cruelty and cunning that still chills to the bone. But what makes this case endure isn't just the violence, it's the words he left behind. The Zodiac didn't just kill, he performed. Each murder was followed by a macabre press package, letters to newspapers filled with misspelled boasts, bomb threats, and above all, ciphers. His first, sent to 3 Bay Area papers in July 1969, contained a 3-part code demanding publication, or else I will do something nasty. Within days, a school teacher and his wife cracked most of it, revealing a narcissistic manifesto. I like killing people because it is so much fun. But the final 18 characters, known as the Z340 cipher, resisted decryption for 51 years, becoming the holy grail of cryptology. Then, in 2020, a team of mathematicians and amateur sleuths finally broke it. Using a groundbreaking algorithm, they uncovered phrases like, "Hope you are having lots of fun," and "My name is," but the killer's identity remained teasingly out of reach. The decryption confirmed what investigators long suspected. Zodiac wasn't just a murderer. He was a puppeteer dangling clues like breadcrumbs meant to lead somewhere. Or nowhere at all. Yet even with modern breakthroughs, the case bristles with unresolved questions. Why did Zodiac's later ciphers, like the infamous Z13, shrink to near impossible brevity? Was it a sign of deteriorating mental health or a deliberate middle finger to codebreakers? Some theorists believe the shorter ciphers contain his name, a final gotcha waiting to be solved. Others argue they're red herrings designed to send researchers down endless rabbit holes. The FBI's cryptanalysis unit still lists them as active, a rare admission that even artificial intelligence hasn't outsmarted the killer's twisted game. What makes the Zodiac phenomenon unique is its cultural metastasizing. Unlike Jack the Ripper, whose reign was brief, Zodiac embedded himself in the American psyche through media manipulation, an early precursor to viral notoriety. He hijacked TV airwaves by demanding live press conferences, crafted his own symbol, the crossed circle insignia, and even inspired copycat communications. His legacy thrives in paradox, a faceless killer who craved attention, a psychopath who wrote letters with the fussy precision of a hobbyist. Today, the ciphers endure as taunting relics. The original Z340 solution didn't crack the case, it deepened the mystery. Every breakthrough seems to birth new questions, and that's precisely what the Zodiac wanted. His letters weren't just clues, they were time capsules ensuring his game would outlive him. Whether he died, vanished, or is still watching from the shadows, one thing's certain: the puzzle boxes he left behind guarantee his voice will never fade. And for those still listening, the challenge remains not just to solve the codes, but to understand the mind that crafted them, because some monsters don't just want victims. They want an audience. From ghostly coaches to vanishing ships, cryptic ciphers to curses that defy time itself, these 25 events share one unshakable thread: the human craving to solve the unsolvable. What makes them endure isn't just their strangeness, but the way they poke at the edges of our understanding, daring us to question what we think we know. Whether it's the calculated cruelty of the Black Monk, the cosmic taunt of the Wow signal, or the chilling intimacy of Hinterkaifeck, each story holds up a mirror to our deepest fears and fascinations. They remind us that history isn't just a record of answers, it's a graveyard of unanswered questions, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to dig them up. But here's the real mystery: why do these stories grip us so tightly? Maybe it's because they force us to confront the limits of science, logic, and even our own senses. In a world obsessed with explanations, they're the cracks in the foundation, the moments where the universe winks and says, "Not so fast," and that's where you come in. These aren't closed cases gathering dust in some archive. They're open invitations to theorize, debate, and maybe even uncover a clue everyone else missed. So what's your take? Did the devil really walk through Devon's snow? Was the Zodiac's final cipher a red herring or his name in plain sight? The comments are your courtroom. Drop your wildest theories, your favorite deep dives, or the enigma that keeps you up at night. And if you're hungry for more riddles woven into history's fabric, hit that subscribe button, because the past isn't done surprising us yet, and neither are we. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, some truths aren't lost, just hiding.